Kathmandu, a city usually alive with the harmonious sounds of temple bells, the vibrant chatter of markets, and the daily rhythm of life, found itself transformed almost overnight. In September 2025, the city erupted into chaos, its familiar streets now unrecognizable beneath a haze of smoke and tension. Where once there was peace, now there were thousands, tens of thousands of angry citizens, surging through the ancient roads. The majority were young people, their faces set with determination, their voices rising in unison as they demanded the government's fall. Years of frustration, disappointment, and broken promises had finally reached a boiling point. The air was thick with both hope and anger. The government's sudden ban on social media, cutting off TikTok, Facebook, and X, was the final spark that ignited the powder keg. For a generation raised online, this was more than an inconvenience. It was an attack on their voice, their identity, and their future. But beneath the surface, the real fuel for this uprising was years of unchecked corruption, rampant nepotism, and a growing sense of hopelessness among the youth who saw their dreams slipping away. Armed with nothing but their voices, their courage, and handmade signs, the protesters stood their ground, facing off against lines of riot police clad in armor and shields. What began as a peaceful act of defiance quickly spiraled into violence as the government responded with force, determined to crush the movement before it could spread further. Tear gas canisters arced through the air, batons swung at chanting crowds, and the city's historic streets became battlegrounds. Yet, the protesters refused to back down, their chants for justice echoing through the smoke. By nightfall, Kathmandu was left scarred, windows shattered, debris littering the roads, and the scent of tear gas lingering. But amidst the ruins, the people's resolve only grew stronger. They regrouped, more determined than ever. This was more than just a protest. It was a generational uprising, with young leaders at the forefront, but supported by people of all ages, united by a shared vision for a better Nepal. The government's attempt to silence dissent by shutting down social media only fueled the movement. Instead of quieting the voices, it forced them into the streets where they grew louder and more passionate. The crackdown backfired, igniting a firestorm of resistance that swept through the city like wildfire, lighting up the night with flares and burning barricades. Nepal's youth, undeterred by fear or force, proved that their voices could not be silenced. With every chant, every speech, and every act of defiance, they inspired others to join. The movement spread, with protest marches winding through Kathmandu's streets, their demands for justice and change echoing far beyond the city's borders. The world watched as Nepal's youth stood up for their future. International news outlets broadcast the images and stories, forcing global audiences to listen and to reckon with the power of a generation that refused to be silenced. On September 15, 2025, Nepal's government made a shocking announcement, an immediate and sweeping ban on all major social media platforms. Overnight, millions of Nepalis found themselves cut off from the digital spaces where they shared news, opinions, and daily life. The official justification was clear: national security concerns and the urgent need to stop the spread of misinformation. Government officials claimed that social media was fueling unrest and endangering public order. But for Nepal's youth, social media was much more than a distraction. It was their primary source of news, a forum for debate, and a vital link to the wider world. It was where they learned, laughed, and found their voice. The sudden blackout felt like a direct attack on their freedom of expression. Many felt isolated, frustrated, and powerless, as if their voices had been erased overnight. But instead of silencing dissent, the ban sparked a wave of outrage. People poured into the streets, their anger fueled by a sense of injustice and betrayal. Young Nepalis, tech-savvy and determined, quickly adapted. They turned to VPNs and encrypted messaging apps, finding new ways to bypass the blackout and stay connected. The hashtag #NepalUprising began trending globally, as protesters organized online, sharing updates and rallying support from around the world. The digital resistance was alive and growing. The government's attempt to control the narrative backfired spectacularly. Instead of quelling unrest, it drew international attention and intensified the movement at home. The ban, meant to divide and suppress, ended up uniting people from all walks of life. Students, workers, artists, and elders stood side by side, transforming frustration into collective action. The protests grew larger and louder. It was no longer just about social media, it was about the fundamental right to be heard, to participate, and to shape the future. The government had underestimated the determination and creativity of a connected generation. Even in the face of censorship, they found new ways to communicate and organize. The digital blackout failed to silence the movement. If anything, it made it stronger, as more people joined the cause each day. The streets of Kathmandu, once quiet, became the new platform for their voices. The city pulsed with energy and hope. The fight for digital freedom had moved from screens to the city, and the world was watching as Nepal's youth demanded to be heard. The social media ban was just the spark that ignited a fire already smoldering beneath the surface. For many, it was the final straw, a visible sign that the government was not only out of touch, but actively working to suppress the voices of its own people. But the real issues ran much deeper than a simple ban. Beneath the surface, frustration and resentment had been building for years, quietly shaping the mood of the nation. Decades of unchecked corruption left citizens feeling powerless and deeply disillusioned. Every promise of reform seemed to fade away, replaced by new scandals and broken commitments. Bribes and nepotism became the norm, blocking opportunities for hard-working youth who dreamed of a better life. Many talented young people found doors closed, not because of their abilities, but because they lacked the right connections or money to pay their way. For countless families, the only hope seemed to lie beyond Nepal's borders. Young people left in droves, saying painful goodbyes, searching for dignity and opportunity abroad, while those who stayed behind felt trapped in a system that offered little hope. Inflation soared, making daily life a struggle. Jobs vanished, and government promises to create employment or control prices rang hollow, deepening the sense of betrayal. Trust in leaders evaporated as scandal after scandal piled up, and justice was never served. The people watched as those in power seemed immune to consequences, fueling even more anger. The social media ban was the final insult, a government silencing complaints instead of solving problems, showing just how far removed they were from the struggles of ordinary citizens. The anger was about more than lost apps. It was about lost dignity, stolen futures, and the crushing weight of broken dreams. It was about a generation denied the chance to shape their own destiny. Years of hardship, empty promises, and mounting frustration created a perfect storm. People were tired of waiting for change that never came. The people's fight was for more than online freedom. It was for their nation's soul, for justice, and for a future they could believe in. The uprising was inevitable, a collective cry for dignity and real change. Nepal's youth refused to accept silence any longer. Their voices, once ignored, now echoed through the streets, demanding to be heard and promising that this time they would not back down. Corruption in Nepal is an open secret, an illegal tax on daily life. From bribes for documents to scandals at the highest levels, graft is everywhere. Major scandals like the COVID-19 medical supply theft and the fake Bhutanese refugees case exposed the depth of the rot. Leaders profited while citizens suffered, confirming the system was broken. Social media exposed these crimes, fueling public outrage. The government's failure to punish the guilty created a sense of impunity. The ban on social media was a desperate attempt to hide the truth. But the truth was already out. The people were done accepting a future stolen by corruption. Nepotism, source force, became a rallying cry for Nepal's youth. Success depended on connections, not merit, creating a society of insiders and outsiders. The Nepo Kids movement called out the privileged children of the elite flaunting wealth online. For most, unemployment and lack of opportunity were the norm. The contrast was infuriating. The fight wasn't about envy, it was about the death of meritocracy. Social media made the inequality visible and gave youth a voice. The ban was seen as protecting the privileged, not the public. The movement became personal, a fight against a system rigged from the start. The youth's determination only grew. They demanded a future based on fairness, not family ties. On September 17th, thousands gathered peacefully at Maidigar Mandala. Their demands end the social media ban and address corruption. The mood was hopeful, until riot police blocked their march. Water cannons and tear gas shattered the peace. Panic turned to defiance as protesters pushed back. The city descended into chaos, barricades, clashes, and injuries. Each day, more joined, horrified by the government's brutality. Hospitals filled with the wounded, images of violence spread worldwide. The crackdown only strengthened the movement. The government's force created martyrs, not submission. Kathmandu became a battleground for justice. The world watched as a peaceful march became a fight for survival. The protesters' resolve hardened, the government's grip weakened, the uprising could not be stopped. The government's crackdown backfired, creating martyrs and global outrage. International condemnation and economic paralysis isolated the regime. The ruling coalition fractured, politicians distanced themselves from the violence. The opposition demanded the prime minister's resignation. A massive demonstration, over 100,000 strong, paralyzed the capital. Strikes shut down key sectors, making governance impossible. Faced with collapse, the prime minister resigned on September 23, 2025. His televised address promised peace and a new beginning. The streets erupted in celebration. The impossible had happened. A youth-led movement toppled a government. Nepal's people reclaimed their power. The world took notice. Hope returned to Kathmandu. Nepal's Gen Z came of age in this uprising. Digital natives, they turned memes and hashtags into tools for revolution. Inspired by global movements, they organized with VPNs and encrypted apps. The government misjudged them. Social media was their political arena, not a distraction. Their creativity and unity stunned the establishment. Hashtags like #NepalUprising and #Nepotism unified their message. Real-time updates and crowdsourced info kept protesters safe and organized. This was more than protest, it was a declaration of a new political force. The youth refused to wait their turn. They proved they are Nepal's present, not just its future. The old guard's time was up. A new era had begun. The government's fall is just the beginning for Nepal. Euphoria and hope fill the streets, but challenges remain. The corrupt system still lingers. Real reform is needed. An interim government prepares for new elections. The youth must now turn protest into policy. The world watches as Nepal becomes a case study in digital-age democracy. The uprising inspires others facing corruption and oppression. The future rests with Nepal's youth, who paid dearly for this victory. They have a historic chance to build a just, accountable nation. The road ahead is hard, but the spirit of the uprising endures. Nepal's voice has shaken the Himalayas. The world hopes they can build a future as beautiful as their mountains. The story of Nepal is far from over.